Wanted to address everybody post All-Star and post trade deadline. Good chance to visit on a number of topics. Today, is a day that I didn't want to have, and that's announcing something about Ben Simmons not playing this season. Yesterday, Ben underwent scan with the doctor in New York, and unfortunately the scan indicated that there's not full healing of the bone, and thus with the amount of time left in the season and the next scan scheduled for about a month from now, the plan as stated today is that he will sit out the rest of the year. There's just not enough time post that next scan to get moving and progress enough with a loading pattern and progression that would put him in game ready condition. So unfortunately, Ben's going to sit out. That's the bad news. The good news is Ben Simmons will one day next year put on a uniform. We're going to try to get him ready as early as this summer. We're going to talk about putting him in a summer league situation where he can get some game experience, maybe play with some of the new draft picks and some of our young players, and get him ready for basketball next season. Not the way you want to start your career, but it's not uncommon. It's happened with several notable players. Julius Randle with the Lakers. Blake Griffin missed his rookie year, or his first year that he was available to be a rookie. And again, we're not excited about the news today, but I'm very excited about having a talent, the level of Ben Simmons in the mix, and part of what we can look at as a potential foundational piece of this basketball program. Joel Embiid is still recovering and rehabilitating his knee injury, which is a bone bruise, and all signs indicate that he's progressing well. We are in the process of establishing, again, a progression back to play. There's been some confusion about when that would be. A couple days ago, he was going to be, doubtful for the 2 weekend games, but upon some consultation with doctors 2 days ago, that plan changed to include the week-long schedule. So he's going to miss the next 4 at a minimum, and then we'll see where things are. The problem, we had all planned on Joel coming back right after the All-Star. We thought that there would be ample time for his training and progression, but I think that with the timing of everything that occurred in terms of All-Star weekend, his training was light but not heavy practice or heavy game situations. The doctors felt it was more prudent, having only a couple of practice sessions to work with, that we wait a few more games. Still not to be thought to be anything serious. It's just being prudent and protective of the long-term health and interest of Joel Embiid, and that's the single most important thing, both with Ben Simmons and with Joel, given their importance to this building that we're going through. The trade deadline was yesterday, and a couple moves were made to address our team and the direction of the team. We made a move 2 days ago to move Ersan Ilyasova to the Atlanta Hawks. We took back future draft assets that we felt would help us, continue to build and continue to grow. It was also very notable that the play of Dario Saric and the importance that he's going to have in the future of this team enabled us to make such a move and apply a lot of those minutes to our young developing players like Dario, and including Lawawu and others, and now Rashawn Holmes is going to get some time with the movement of another player, Nerlens. But this is about getting these players, young players, ready and prepared for the stretch when we really take off. There's been a lot of improvement this year, and we're moving forward in a lot of positive ways, despite the injuries that I've talked about. But the notion that these players are going to be more game experienced, more ready. I think you're seeing it play out in someone like T.J. McConnell. You know, here's a guy that was undrafted that played 1,500 NBA minutes last year. That's unheard of. But you can see how the results of that experience have taken effect in his play this season. So with Ersan going out, it opens up an opportunity for Dario and others to get more time and continue to move in the right direction for us. Ersan is a tremendous individual, gave us a lot. You know, this organization is thankful for having him. He helped establish a level of professionalism and competitiveness that we really think he added a lot to the program. In talking to Ersan and his representative, there was some conversation about potential long-term commitment that he was looking for, that he desired, which didn't necessarily align with our long-term objectives of our plan and vision. And we decided that when this opportunity came up, it was the right opportunity to move him on and put him in a situation where he could potentially obtain that opportunity or attain that opportunity. And in going to Atlanta, we're confident that he is going to a program that will benefit him. Coach being friendly with Bud, running similar type systems, similar type offense, and having similar philosophies about coaching. I think it's a natural fit for him. He's going to go play playoff basketball, and we're happy he's getting that opportunity. With respect to the next trade, which was done yesterday, we moved Nerlens Noel to the Dallas Mavericks for Justin Anderson and draft considerations. Justin Anderson is a young wing that we think is going to add something to this team in the way of a defensive-minded approach, toughness, talent, athleticism. You know, we like to describe him as, you know, someone who's got some of that edge that we talk about all that time. I think Philly fans are going to love Justin's approach to the game. I think that the coaches here have talked about what he's capable of doing, and they're excited to bring that kind of a wing in. Sounds like an Amber Alert. Hope it's all right. It wasn't, sorry. But in the meantime, you know, bringing Justin into the situation, again, another chance to bring in a young player, a wing that's going to, you know, potentially add something to this team. We're excited. He's a former first-round draft pick out of Virginia. You've all seen his bio, but he adds something to the mix that we're excited to have. The draft considerations, a heavily protected first-round pick, which is obviously very likely to be 2 seconds, is something that, again, adds to the kitty, so to speak. We've got a number of draft assets and future considerations that are going to benefit this organization as we go through this building process, whether used in trades, you know, as trade assets, or to acquire players, you know, going forward. And we think that the use of second-round picks has become even more important with the new two-way contracts of the CBA. And the value of those picks, obviously, in some cases are known, in some cases are unknown, given that some are, you know, in the Dallas situation, it's a 17 and a 2020 that are both unprotected. But in terms of the first, you know, not dissimilar to what happened with the OKC pick that's due to us. You never know what happens in this league. You never know how a draft is going to turn out. You know, protection can sometimes be important. And the fact that it is heavily protected, we're realists when we talk about the true value, the way we're looking at the value of the picks as 2 seconds. So Nerlens was obviously, you know, a part of something here over the last several years that, you know, has become a tough slog through a lot of losing and, you know, unfortunately, a lot of things that brought people to a point where, it was all about building forward and moving forward, and that's where we are today. Nerlens is a player that contributed a lot to the organization in a lot of ways. He was a respected teammate, and we think that in Dallas, he's got an opportunity to achieve really what he would like to achieve, which is a starting role and a commensurate contract that will work well for him. And I think that, given the circumstances with restricted free agency on the horizon and our commitment to a young player named Joel Embiid and a few others, including some, contract planning that needs to go into our roster building plan, it didn't make sense to go forward and, go through that process with restricted free agency. So we moved on it. We think it's the right move for the organization at this time, and we will, be very happy to welcome Justin Anderson and any future players that are a result of this trade to the fold. So where are we today? Nothing has changed with respect to the plan and the vision. The plan and the vision is to build a successful and sustainable basketball program. Coach works at it every day. Coach talks about it every day. The things that we go through on a daily basis, striving for success, striving for perfection, is unchanged. We are aspiring to win an NBA championship. And that means we're building a program based on multi-positional talent, multi-positional skills, and championship DNA. And that goes into every decision that's made across the board. And as we move forward, there's a lot of bright things on the horizon. We're experiencing a lot of brightness right now. At 21 wins, more than double what we achieved last year as an organization and a team, we're still sitting at the All-Star break with 26 games to go. We feel like we've taken a massive stride forward, partly because of an infusion of talent, partly because of an infusion of respected veteran leadership, but mostly because our young developing core is getting better, and Coach Brown and his staff are striving every day to put a winning product on the court. So with that, we are moving forward, for that future, and the future is closer than I think a lot of people realize. Questions?
Ryan,
Yep.
I think one of your terms was adding to the kitty, is what you said as far as what you got back. I think the fan base is maybe a little disappointed, thinking there could have been more gotten back and not just adding to the kitty. You had mentioned before that you didn't want to just trade to trade. Did the market kind of disappoint you a little bit of what you did get in return? And secondly, was there a time maybe during the draft last year that you could have gotten more back and it just didn't play out the way you saw?
Yeah, very good question. The market dictates what's there, and interestingly, given our situation with multiple talented bigs, I think it's pretty safe to say that people view us as a place to come if they're looking for a big. Several bigs were out there and available and on the market. Trade went down early. Nurkic going to Portland. There was some conversation, obviously, with Jalil early, some advanced discussions, even to the point where we took him out of a game situation, just because there was so much at stake, given the terms of a proposed transaction. The situation with Nerlens, him being a restricted free agent, certainly affected how people approached that type of a player. And it was more or less, the case with every conversation that I had, that that concern about what that contract might look like in the future was certainly a factor in people's apprehension to move forward. You know, I've often said I wouldn't make a bad deal, but yesterday I made the best deal that was available to us, and it was the right deal for this organization. It's, you know, a scenario where, going back to the other side of that question, which was, you know, was there something that we looked at or were discussing closer to the draft? You know, when I got here, Joel Embiid had not played an NBA game. Jahlil Okafor was coming off of a surgery. And if I was looking at the roster and looking at the board, we were plugging in Nerlens Noel as our starting center at that point. There was no other way around it because of the unknowns related to both Joel and Jahlil. Of course, there was Rashawn in the shadows as an emerging backup, but really no confidence at that point that he was ready to assume that role. So I would tell you that there was things thought of, there was, you know, things considered, but it was always considered undoable at that time given the unknowns. So as we went forward and saw, you know, the advancement and progression of Joel, got closer to the season, and you know, just reminding you also that, you know, at that point when I was brought in, he was already basically an RFA, restricted free agent, because 2 games left in the season. You know, once that season ended, he was going to have status. There was 2 options at that point: either negotiate an extension, which we didn't feel comfortable with as an organization at that particular time, and letting him play out the last year. The fact that things have changed, that Joel has emerged as a transformational type of player, it's certainly made the decision to possibly move Nerlens much easier. So as the season progressed, and you know, there was early on, Nerlens did not play because of the surgery that he had. That was really going to be the opportunity for him to play and show himself, and you know, that didn't happen, so that was unfortunate. Then all of a sudden, Joel is emerging, getting off his minutes restriction, or coming to a point where he was playing almost a full game. Jahlil got healthy and was available and ready. Then the confusion started again when there wasn't a clear path for him to play when he came back healthy. So it's been a cycle of really injuries, depth, and you know, we now come to a place where, you know, we think there's a clearer vision about that center position. And when you talk about that center position, allocating so much money to the one spot with 2 players involved, it just doesn't pencil out with respect to roster management and roster building. So I think that the deal that was made yesterday was the best deal that was available. And although we could have played the match and trade scenario had he gotten an offer this summer, there are some restrictions and risk there that I think at the end of the day, we felt there is better use for our planning of roster building in terms of the cap space and flexibility that we have now secured by not signing him to an extension, or signing him to a contract or matching an offer sheet this summer. Yep.
Why is the injury to Ben Simmons? What have the doctors told you that it's taken so long?
Yep.
And because there has, in the last month, been a trust factor,
Yep.
did you, on the organization's part, did you guys know that this was a probable direction? And if so, why not just let people know?
I have always known that there was a desire to get him back on the court when healthy. We've always anticipated that there would be an opportunity for him to play, hopefully this season. But there was always the outside chance, Howard, that it didn't happen because there wasn't complete or full healing. And we were not going to put Ben Simmons in a situation where he was at risk for a refracture. There's such a broad spectrum of healing pattern in the human body. Everybody's different. Genetics, rest, exercise, diet, everything plays a factor here. But there's genetic things that change the healing patterns of people. So if everybody had done their research and saw that most Jones fractures take 3 to 4 months, great. There's a story. It's not 3 to 4 months in every case. It's 3 to 4 months in most cases. So we didn't know. And I think I was also quoted as saying, and I said it on a broadcast, I believe, in Atlanta a couple days prior to his last scan 1 month ago. It was the final scan. Well, I was hopeful. It was a poor choice of words. I think I should have said, I'm hopeful it's the final scan. Turned out it wasn't. And it didn't show complete healing even then, which is why we said once again, we're going to reset, wait 1 more month, take another scan, and see where we are. So today, on the heels of finding out yesterday that there's still incomplete healing, we're going to move forward with the same path and same plan, and we're going to talk to the doctors about what potential alternatives we have to increase or promote healing. We've gone through case studies, and this has been an ongoing process from the very beginning, and we're evolving in that care, because some things that you get into are elective, but we want to make sure that no matter what the case, Ben Simmons only takes the court when it shows complete healing, because that's when we're going to reduce the chance or the possibility of further risk of a refracture. Howard, I don't know how to define progress to a scan other than the scans have not shown full healing. So as you move forward, I think it's safe to say there was progress, but I can't assess how much or to what degree. It's really impossible for me, as much as even to the naked eye. There's things that I think you would look at, if you're a doctor or a radiologist, a little bit differently than what I would be able to interpret. But what I've been told is, it does continue to, I guess, progress appropriately, but at a slower pace than what anyone hoped for. And so it's disappointing. I think, Ben Simmons, 19-year-old, maybe 20 now, I think, he's heartbroken. He wants to play. He wants to be out there. It's eaten him alive, I'm sure. And, unfortunately, that's not going to happen this season. So he's going to have to reset his clock, if you will, and try to figure out what the best way to approach that mentally is. And we're going to go about a process of trying to help him through that. So, again, it's not good news for anybody, but the good news is we're so on top of it that we're not going to put him in a position to risk a refracture. And it's happened countless times. If you did only an x-ray and you studied that x-ray and you said, he looks healthy, he'd be out there playing right now. But the scan is different. The scan gets deep and inside, and you can see multi-dimensional layers of what's going on there, and we do not want to put him in a position where he is at risk for refracture, because that would be the worst thing for him, it would be the worst thing for us, and it would be the worst thing for the fans, because we want to hit the ground running next year.
And I know that Joel Embiid had talked about after the Houston game how he had to convince the doctors to let him play, and said he was told it was going to be 2 to 3 weeks for the bone bruise. Yesterday he talked about how he was disappointed in how the organization handled that information, said he thought that keeping his name out there was literally having people think of him all the time instead of giving a broader timetable of when he was back. He said he was happy that there's now a timetable for when he might possibly return. Do you regret the way that was handled in terms of letting fans know about a possibility of him being out longer than the quote-unquote day-to-day situation?
I regret one thing, that when we talked about day-to-day progression and day-to-day treatment and day-to-day evaluation, that following the second injury, which was I'm not going to call it a second injury, but the aggravation or re-injury, if you will, we should have just said out indefinitely. Even though the treatment was still day to day, but the fact that there was uncertainty, I'll own that. It's effectively, I'm talking to doctors and the medical staff, and they say we're going to treat it the same way we treated it after the Portland game, which was day to day. The 2 to 3 week comment, and I think I know where that came from. There was a lot of discussion, and despite the fact that we were saying it's day-to-day treatment and evaluation, 2 to 3 weeks may have been mentioned as a possibility of what it may be, but a possibility. To say that publicly might not have been the best thing, at the time, because I was also told sometimes it's 4 to 6 weeks, for a bone bruise, to resolve itself.
Which is kind of where it's playing out now.
But that's resolving symptomatically. Sometimes taking it a step further and not, again, playing doctor, just regurgitating some of what I hear. Sometimes a bone bruise may stay on a scan for 6 to 8 weeks. But once it resolves itself symptomatically, and that's what we've been saying all along, but I regret saying day to day when it should have been out indefinitely. But I have to say that there's never, ever been any effort to deceive fans, to mislead you. We give the information as we're given the information. We've got very good medical care, very good medical oversight. Everything is explainable, but injuries are unpredictable, is the best way I can describe it.
One thing that you said early on was that there was absolutely no chance of any kind of a tank for this season.
Mm-hmm.
When people look at what happened on the trade deadline leading up, the trading of Ersan Ilyasova and Nerlens Noah have been very key parts of the team's success so far this season. What do you say to fans now who look at the roster, look at, as you just described it, not knowing when Joel Embiid will actually return to the court in terms of the performance and how you as in your position are also evaluating the success of the team going forward?
I think I say Dario Saric. He answered the question for us that he was capable of moving into a much more significant role. And if you look at the path of this basketball team over the last month and a half, Dario has performed at a level even above Ersan. And what this allows for is more time and more opportunity for Dario to play those minutes, continue to cut his teeth on the NBA, so that, as I indicated earlier, next year he's going to hit the ground running and have so much more to offer. And in Ersan's case, when you are talking about building something, which we are, I knew that we had effectively an asset that was going to potentially walk away because our contract desires didn't align. And we did have a really unique opportunity, given Ersan's expiring contract and being a team with extraordinary cap space right now, to potentially even renegotiate and extend his deal. And the deadline for that would have been March 1st. So I did have dialogue with his agent about a scenario where we would give him a bump in the current year and extend him by 1 year. And as much as that was intriguing because of the amount of money that was discussed or thought to be available based on our cap space, it didn't fit the term that they desired. So having said that, we moved forward, and this opens a door for our young core players to get better and play. And if you look at the numbers, I don't think we're going to take an incredible step back, given that, we have, some players to step in and fill that void. So, again, Ersan gave us a lot while he was here. He made us competitive early, but some of the others have really come in and done what they needed to do, which was develop into serviceable and or very highly contributing players, and that's what we're finding with these guys.
Brian, given that the Jahlil Okafor trade talks reached a point where you told him to stay home from a road trip, would you say it's fair to characterize yesterday's events and the Nerlens Noel trade as a backup plan? And to also build off that, if you believe that the market this summer for Nerlens Noel made it prohibitive for you to spend that kind of money on him, why don't you think a better market for his services emerged yesterday?
Well, again, better market for Nerlens or a better market for Jahlil? Just
Well, so better market for either one. Why don't you
Okay.
think, because
Okay.
you said you made the best deal yesterday, so
Sure.
why don't you think a better market emerged?
Well, the only opportunities that may have come up this summer with dealing Nerlens in any kind of a free agent scenario would have been a potential sign and trade scenario, but those are much more difficult given the fact that these teams may have thought, hey, he's a target. They've got Joel Embiid. They've got a huge commitment to him out on the horizon, arguably. There's not a chance that we would match a contract offer. So why would they give us anything when they can just go get him? Generally, that does result in an overpayment. You saw it last year with multiple free agents in the market, some restricted free agents. And those teams that matched those contracts are now dealing with the consequences of those contracts. So one reason we tried to avoid all the things that we talked about is because what may happen to us and how restrictive that may have been for some of the other things we hope to do and hope to accomplish. With respect to the interest in Jahlil, because of his rookie scale contract, because of the value of having 2 more years versus being a restricted free agent, the market for him was much more broad and arguably much more conducive to doing something. But the right deal did not present itself, so we did not make that deal. A number of people are planning for the summer, looking at different opportunities. They've talked to me about, we may revisit. There's interest in Jahlil, and rightfully so. He's a talented player, and we're happy to have him here and happy to have him part of our organization. But again, the value proposition of having a rookie scale contract and 2 years left is really what drives that. So once the deal was there for Nerlens, it made it a little more difficult to make a transition to trading Jahlil, but the right deal never presented itself regardless. Had it come, would we have done it? Likely so. Jahlil and his agent, Bill Duffy, who I've got a great relationship with, we've talked about positive solutions or possible solutions, and it's something that you do with players that want to get to a situation that could fit them better. There was a lot of behind-the-scenes discussions and talk about finding an amicable solution because, quite frankly, Jahlil's got the same issue that Nerlens has. He wants to play somewhere. He wants to start. He wants to see an opportunity that exists. And at the end of the day, I'm hopeful that at some point he can find that and we can find that. But for now, he's a valuable part of what we're doing. He's a nice, talented player that was brought in here for a reason. He was a high draft pick, and he retains a market, as a contributing NBA player.
And
Yeah.
as a follow-up to what you were just saying about owning the comments that Joel said yesterday about wishing this team was a little bit more transparent with his injury, given the Simmons situation and the fact that a lot of fans thought that he would still play this season and now he's out, and given what Joel said yesterday about wishing the team had just come out and said that this injury would take a little longer, do you see how that might be perceived by the fan base who's buying tickets as being dishonest, and do you see that the fans might be upset by the way you guys have handled those situations?
Yeah, I surely can see it, but again, I'm gonna I'm going to chalk that up to just a frustrated young man who heard something different than what he heard a week earlier, where he thought he was coming back. He thought there was a chance he would play on Friday night, and then to be told that he's going to miss up to 4 games. He's competitive. He wants to be there. Again, I said that it was our mistake to put out day-to-day as opposed to out indefinitely, but that mistake will not be made again. And again, there's no deceit. There's no movement toward doing anything to be dishonest here at all. It's quite simple. Injuries are a hard thing to manage. Injuries are more difficult to manage with daily interface with this group, the media, the public, games being played, the schedule, no practice. It's a sensitive issue, and you're not talking about simple things. You're talking about complex injuries. You're talking about high-level performers and I'm calling them our stars. They're the ones that everybody wants to see, Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and they're both out. And nobody is more frustrated than them or us, and I can absolutely understand the frustration of the fans. But I will say that even early on, when we were systematically and very carefully mapping out therapy, his plan of progression, loading, unloading, and this, I'm going back to Joel now. The first time that we came upon this back-to-back scenario where he would play a game or not play a game, and it aired on the side of he's going to play in Minnesota, if you remember, and there was talk about it being a national TV game. Let's put it this way. I made sure that never happened again. If we were going to err on the side of which game he would play, we were going to err on the side of him playing here. Always was the case. That particular one was the first, if I'm not mistaken, and it's a response basically to our fans. They spoke, we listened, and I think it's important. But I instructed the medical team that we should only factor that in if it is within the scope of his plan of progression, in terms of rehabilitating his injury or making sure managing his injury. So that's where we are. And again, I can understand frustration and doubt, but these things, the best I can say is that they're very difficult, complex situations to manage, and we will do better.
With Simmons, how convincing was the evidence and skills you saw from him in the summer and maybe the first week in training camp? What else have you observed from him as he's gone through some of the stuff he's done so far this season, and how might that shape the way you look to the offseason?
Well, again, the talent was there when we decided to pick him with the first pick. His vision, his speed, his power. I'd call him a transformational kind of player in his own way. He's a guy that has so many skills with his size. The size to skill ratio is incredible. But what I've seen since is a guy that's working on his shot every day. He's been working on his conditioning, whether it be in a loading pattern or a non-loading pattern. He's been in the HydroWorks working on the treadmill, the underwater treadmill, which is a weight-bearing reduction type of system that allows him to get that kind of conditioning. He goes through a regimen every day where he talks to the coach, he watches film, he goes into the weight room, he does some court work that's allowable and part of that pattern. It's impressive, and he's got to be bored to tears. I'm sure that he's anxious to play, and we're all anxious to see him play. But I don't see anything but positive improvement as he goes into next season, despite the fact that he hasn't played a game.
The off season with looking at draft possibilities, that sort of thing. Do you feel like you have enough sense of how he might be able to fit in, even with some of the limited stuff he's done?
It would have been ideal to have a chance to see how he actually fit with Joel and other things, but he's the kind of player you put him on the court and he's going to play and make players better. And we feel that we're going to continue to make choices as we build this roster with things that we hope and anticipate are part of what we see there in terms of him interacting. So some of it's going to be projecting out, but some of it's going to be going and getting the best talent that's available. And if we can get fit and talent to match, it's going to be fantastic.
Even if he recovers from that bone bruise, will Embiid at some point need a procedure to correct that meniscus tear, slight as it is?
I certainly hope not. I've been told that it's not the cause of any kind of symptoms that he's having or that are ongoing. But I was told again, that it was a non-acute injury, that it was a minor tear, and that it is not related. But I don't rule anything out with injuries because it could be that it's not acting up now, but it could act up at a later date. We've said often there's a lot of players in the league that are playing with similar conditions or worse and are asymptomatic, maybe not even aware of it. So that's where we are. Yeah, Keith. No. I'm good. Oh, shoot-around's over. It's been long.
Hey, Brian, where do you guys stand in regards to Tiago Splitter and Andrew Bogut as far as joining and becoming a member of this team?
Great question. Sometimes players are involved in deals to make math work. Sometimes they're involved in deals to accomplish objectives of either your team or the other team. In Tiago's case, it was a math equation. There is, right now he's overcoming an injury and an off-season surgery that he had, I think at the tail end of last season, if I'm not mistaken. It was a complex injury in and of itself. I think his goal in speaking to his agent is he's hopeful to get back on the court at some point this year. And, we'll certainly adopt him into our rehabilitation and medical program and try to give him the best possible care to help him accomplish that. But as far as long-term him fitting in and being part of something, I don't see that at this date, but once again, it's certainly something that we'll look at if he happens to fit. I think his anticipation, though, is just landing somewhere, getting a chance to finish out the season, showing that he's healthy, and then setting himself up for an opportunity to play somewhere next year. Hold on one second. I got one more. With Andrew, Andrew right now is not going to be here at least for the foreseeable week. He's got some personal things that he's dealing with at home, family related, and had a nice conversation with the agent yesterday. And for the time being, I'm comfortable with that. There's the possibility that he may want to, go play somewhere in the playoffs. In order to accomplish that, that would take some sort of a buyout or what have you. There's certain things that we'll talk about and discuss, but I'll be discussing that with his agent over the next 5 to 7 days, and see if that's even possible. But I got two more. I got Derek and then Tom. Oh.
Jessica, and then Bob.
Okay.
So going back
You got cut out.
Going back to Ben's January scan, was there concern at that time that his season could be in jeopardy? Is it fair to say there's no surgical procedure scheduled at this time? And I guess why not let fans know from the jump that there was another scan scheduled so they could, set their expectations accordingly?
I think, again, we're talking Ben, right? Okay. I think that, without saying there was another scan, we were taking pretty much monthly scans, and it was monthly visits to the doctor. We had talked about it. I don't know that a date was given, but we said I think the release, I'd have to read it, but the release following the last scan was that we're going to continue the path that we've been on, and that path was pretty much monthly checkups with the doctor, follow-ups. I don't know that I could have added anything more that say we'll revisit in a month, or but I'm saying that now, that we're going to revisit in a month. But at this point, given that it's with 2 weeks to go in the season, there's just not enough time to pivot into a plan or progression to play. He continues to do on-court work that is actually intended to promote healing. There's elements of things in training that you can do that, again, promote or stimulate the healing process, and you know, that's where he is right now as we wait for the next scan. But you know, there was always an anticipation, as I said earlier, that he could come back and play. Anticipation is probably maybe not the right word. We were hopeful. We were hopeful that he was doing that. Even coach saying, hey, I fully anticipate, because we really did believe that it was possible. And unfortunately, that's not the case. So the future is the bright part. The future is that we're handling this the right way with him and protecting him from going out and being at risk of a refracture. So that's where we find ourselves. Yes, Jessica?
Brian, when you look back on the trade deadline, what were you looking to accomplish overall, and how do you feel you did with that?
You know, you try to make your team better. You try to set yourself up for further growth and development. You try to prepare for the next round of roster building and roster management. And I think we accomplished all of that by doing the things that we did. You bring in a good young wing. You create or establish, you lock in flexibility with respect to your salary cap positioning, and you bring in more assets that could result in ultimately an acquisition of another player. So, you know, the plethora of picks that we do have, not only in this draft but in future drafts, becomes quite attractive to teams that desire to make deals with us. I can personally attest that there's a lot of interest in several of our assets, and when it's time to apply those assets, whether through our own selection, draft selection, or draft rights being traded to somebody, or, you know, future draft picks, if it makes sense, we'll put them into a deal. But remember one thing that I've said often: we're going to do this with measured steps. We don't want to race out and do something to put ourselves in a position to lose the opportunity that we have right in front of us. And I think the opportunity is enormous, and I think that if we handle this the right way, we're going to be very happy, and the fans will be very happy.
Brian, just real
Yep.
quick, as far as Ben goes, I think Derek might have asked you this also, but has there been any talk of more procedures, of anything further
Not yet,
besides
no.
scan? Nothing at all?
Not yet. You know, it happened. The scan happened at 3 o'clock yesterday. Trade deadline was at 3 o'clock. I know that the operating physician saw him yesterday, Tom O'Malley. I really want to try to get everybody together in a room and talk about what next steps are. Once again, to make sure that we're going down the right path, and to do everything possible to put him in a position to promote the best possible scenario for healing. And that's where we are today. Will that happen in the next couple of days? Will a determination be made? It's unknown. I can't, you know, tell you what would come of that meeting, if anything, other than, you know, we stay the course, because, you know, we feel like we're doing a lot of things, but we're constantly looking for other means. I hope that's not the case, that it would require something more serious or more intervention in some way, but where we are today, it's staying the course and assessing exactly what we have based on the scan yesterday.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.